took pictures of shoes, put them up on a website, had people call in and order those shoes, and he'd rush out to the store which he got the pictures from, and then he'd go and sit and put them in the mail and send them to people. That's how they actually got started. But as it morphed, a gentleman named Tony Shea said, you know, it's not really exciting selling shoes, but how can I create an environment where my staff is going to be pumped up and engaged? And so he went on this journey of creating what he calls delivering happiness. And in this delivering happiness, he focused on getting his people excited, getting to a culture of engagement, getting to a culture of letting people be empowered. In fact, his whole philosophy was, I'm going to cut my marketing budget in half and focus on my individuals. And it'll be through all of my contacts as my customers, and they have about 5,000 a day. With my 5,000 contact points with my customers, that's where I'm going to do my marketing. It is that marketing that's going to set me apart. And he's gone on to sell, him and his partners have gone on to sell the business for about $1.2 billion to Amazon in only 5 years of operation. And his sole point was, we don't sell shoes, we sell service and culture. And now they actually sell pots, pans, vacations, they're getting into air travel. But he says what we sell is his culture. So culture is a competitive advantage. Nestle's here in the Philippines, has been here for over 100 years. Some of you have people who work at Nestle. It's a great company, a great brand. It treats its people really well. When you go into their headquarters here in Rockwell, you'll see banners around what they want to accomplish for the year, what they want to be engaged with. And people throughout that organization understand where they're going. One of my favorite stories, which has nothing to do with business, is the USS Binfold. Now, it's also, I'm biased, it's a Navy story. And I was in the Navy, right? So the USS Binfold was commanded by a tall, blue-eyed guy named Commander Abrashoff. Commander Abrashoff took over this destroyer, which had a bad reputation within the U.S. Navy. Within 2 years, he turned that reputation completely around. And let me tell you how he did it. First is, he talked to everybody. When he came on board the ship, in the military you can say, hey, when I say jump, you say how high. That's a possible strategy, right? That's a possible leadership style. When he came on board the ship, he talked to all 600 men and with a one-on-one discussion. From his officers to the petty officers on board, he had individual conversations with all of them. And he documented those conversations so he could understand what they really wanted. So once he did that, then he empowered them to go after many of the things that they wanted to do. And much of this was, I would say, against Navy regs. As an example, what color are military ships? Gray. So they had this job in the Navy. I'm happy I never had to do it. But they had this job in the Navy where you have to chip off the paint, chip off the rust, and then repaint the boat, right? That's tedious, it's out in the sun, there's no fun around that. His guys actually told him, you know, there's a paint that won't rust and it'll stay longer than the paint that the Navy uses. We don't know why they don't use it, but if you let us do it, not only will it save you money, we won't have to do the work. So he actually went and brought this paint. It has a lifetime expectancy 2 times better than the normal Navy paint, and is a third cheaper. So he put that into play. The second is, they said we want better food on board the boat. The food that we're getting from the Navy is not that great. He sent 5 of his cooks, when they pulled into Italian ports, he sent 5 of them to school for 3 months. They came back and cooked the best food that the ship ever had. People who wanted to, guys who wanted college and retention, he actually had them flown in, professors from different schools, flown in on the ship to do time with them and to educate his group. Several things came out of this. His retention in the Navy was the best in the Navy. His boat had the best retention in the Navy. And he did that by getting people involved. In fact, if you talk to Mike, he says, I divide the world into 2 groups, infidels and believers. The problem is the infidels outnumber the believers, right? And the believers are those who are focusing on the culture, who are focusing on engagement, who are focusing on empowering individuals. But most of us, we're uncomfortable with that. We don't know how to get started. Again, as I told you, in my career, it was all about the analytics. It wasn't about how am I going to get engaged with the people? How am I going to create that culture? Okay? So I show you these two. I show you these 3 companies because I'm talking about competitive advantage. Culture is mission critical because it is a competitive advantage, not because it's just nice to have. Here in the Philippines, how many people like Starbucks or go to Starbucks? Raise your hand. Okay. How many people are aware of the 5 B's within Starbucks? So you have to be a little crazy like me to be able to study Starbucks in the Philippines and find out these things, right? So in the US we have Starbucks. Many other countries that travel around Asia, there are Starbucks. But there's something about the Starbucks in the Philippines that transcends all other Starbucks. I mean, it's palatable when I compare it to the US, when I compare it to Singapore. It just comes off extremely positive. And it's more than Filipinos are just nice people, which they are, but it's more than that. So I started to talk to people within the Starbucks and say, you know, why are you guys so nice? And the question isn't, why are you so nice in this particular location? But why are you so nice in every location I go? Why is there consistency there? Why isn't it just good in Alabama and not good in Makati? How come in Ortigas it's good, but in Taguig it's not good? How come we don't have those pockets? Does anybody know? It's the 5 B's. So the 5 B's are be genuine, be welcoming, be involved, be knowledgeable, be courteous. This is something they teach across all of their Starbucks. Now, it might be interesting to think, well, yeah, 5 B's. You go ask anybody in any of the Starbucks, what are the 5 B's? And they'll tell you the 5 B's. This is what makes it interesting. What I do is I don't say the 5 B's, even though I know the 5 B's. I just go to the counter and I say, hey, you know, there's these things that you guys are really passionate about and you teach at every training class, and I'm not sure, maybe it's involvement or something like that. And all of a sudden, they all know it. They haven't memorized it. This is the message. They haven't memorized it. It's in their DNA. These 5 B's aren't something they have said, okay, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It is something that is within their DNA because culturally it transcends the training within the Philippines. And again, if I go to other Asian countries, I go to Budapest, I go to the US, they all have Starbucks, but they don't have this level of passion about what they do. And the reason that passion and alignment around those 5 B's is that it speeds accelerating results and it reduces the cost. Because everywhere you go, they understand the culture. Next slide. People retention. People retention. So Maxwell's famous at doing this. How many people read John Maxwell books? Right? Everybody should read a John Maxwell book if you have it in your career. It's very powerful. But the essence of, I don't know about your job, but I do have people in the BPO space. We do have high levels of turnover. I don't think that's new news to anybody. Is that correct? Right? But people do not care about how much you know until they know how much you care. So to improve retention, you need your culture to help you do that. As I talked to you before about the Benfold, their retention rate was a third better than the rest. Zappos retention rate attrition rate is less than 10%. And I'll tell you some stories later about cutting attrition in half here in the Philippines. It is mission critical. Culture is mission critical. It is not just nice to have. Okay. 2 years ago, and I won't say the company, but 3 years ago, I worked for a company here in the Philippines. We had attrition that was about 100% annualized. And everybody who works in the industry can realize that 100% attrition, no matter how you cut it, is painful, right? Painful on the way you engage with your customers, painful on the cost for hire and training, painful on bringing people up to speed on processes and tools. And I knew that for myself, in the group that I was taking over, and I had about 1,600 people, in the group that I was taking over, that I had to prevent that. But I knew that the culture wasn't cohesive. So I was actually going down the path of doing it for those 1,600 people. And then my boss at that time said, Keith, that sounds like a great idea. Can you do it for the entire region? Before I said yes, there were 8 things that I said you need to sign up for. 1, you got to have sweat equity in it yourself. You can't assign it to me and say, Keith is running the program. The second is, all your direct reports, it has to be in their scorecard. If you want to know if your culture is important, follow your budget. If you want to know if your culture is important, follow your budget. The other is, we have to have a meeting once a month with the senior group to bring them together. And we have to make an investment. We are making a strategic investment in our budget to do these engagement activities, to build this culture, and that is not a one and done event, it's a iterative process. Fortunately, he said, Keith, I don't really do this vision, culture, and values thing, but I know it's the right thing to do. If you lead it, I'll sign up to all 8. So I really got lucky because he signed up for all 8, and we took on the entire Philippine region. And within 18 months, our attrition went from 100% to 60%. Now, 60% is still not a great number. I'm not jumping up and down, but a 40% reduction in 18 months. We had the highest number of customer satisfaction scores than we had in 5 years. And we went from 5,000 employees to 7,000 employees in that time, right? So those 3 combined items. The next is inspiring greatness. I'm going to leave that to later in the presentation, and we'll talk about that some more. Next part, is there an economic value in culture? So obviously, since I'm up here, I'm saying that there is an